Okay, let's do a quick review of layers in Photoshop and then go on to slightly more advanced aspects of layers, specifically adjustment layers and masks. All right, so let's start out with a new document, okay? And as usual, this is the important stuff here. I'm going to change this to inches and I'll make it L 5 by 5 inches at 300 pixels per inch. I don't know how my color mode ended up grayscale, but I'll put that RGB and create. All right, so we have a nice square that's white. I double clicked on the hand to make it fill the whole screen. And let's just fill it with clouds. If you were in the basic computer graphics class last semester, I think most of you were, this will just be a review of kind of where we ended off there. So I'm going to make my foreground and background color 2 different colors. I don't know, 2 different things. And I will just go up to my filters and then render and clouds. And it will give me clouds made out of these 2 colors. And if I want a little more interesting, I can go filter, render, difference clouds. Okay. And it applies another set of clouds on top with a blending mode of difference. That's why they're called difference clouds. And I can go filter, and it remembers the last thing I ran, so I can hit it a bunch of times if I want to. All right, so it gets more interesting. I don't really like those colors, so to change the colors, I can go to Image and then Adjustments. Okay, and we have all these different controls that will make an adjustment on the current layer, right? And I'm going to try hue saturation and maybe drag the hue around until I get something I like a little better. Maybe make it less saturated a little bit. It's just a background, so okay, so whatever, it doesn't really matter. Now, down to the layers palette, should be here, right? And let's see, the workspace I'm currently in is Essentials Default, which I think will be okay. I just went to Window Workspace to check on it. Yeah, sometimes we'll be in a different workspace, but this should be fine for now, as long as you can see the layers palette down here. So let's make a new layer. The simplest way is just to hit the little plus thing. It's a square with a plus in it. That's Adobe's new icon for new something, okay? If I go to the channel palette, it's there, okay? If I go to the paths, it's there, and it just means new whatever it is. If I go to the swatches palette, it means makes a new swatch. Okay. Up until this year, it was always a page with a corner turned over. For whatever reason, they changed that. I don't know. So I'll hit that, and I'll make a new layer, layer 1. Okay, and I'm going to get a paintbrush, some contrasting color. And I'm in the paintbrush, right? Which in this workspace, I guess will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the left side, but should be easy to find. If I right click, I can make it harder, okay, or fuzzier and adjust the size. Okay, I'm going to make it harder. And I can also adjust the size by hitting the left or right bracket key on the keyboard, okay? So that'll be layer 1, okay? And so you want to make sure that you're painting on layer 1, not on the background, okay? That's the thing in Photoshop is you always have to be conscious of what layer you're on and don't accidentally paint on the wrong layer, because painting on the wrong layer is often a fatal error, okay? And it's a common error, particularly amongst you noobs. So, but if I go to my move tool, top left on the toolbar, you'll see you can move the thing around, right? Because in whatever way you can, you want to work non-destructively non-destructively in Photoshop. If I paint this right on the background layer, it obliterates the clouds that were there, right? And it replaces it with this. So we work on a transparent layer. Let's hit the new layer icon again and make another layer. I'm going to change my color to something else. Make this paintbrush. Come on, paintbrush. Soft, and I'm going to make this number 2. Okay. So whichever layer is active, see it's lighter in the layer palette. That's the active layer. Okay. The move tool, it doesn't matter really what you click on. This is if I click on layer 1 and drag anywhere I want, that becomes that's the active layer, and that's what moves. Okay. Or I can do shift and activate both layers, not the background because that's locked at the moment, and move them both around. Okay. Now, one other thing you can do here is the way we just did it, it doesn't really matter where you click, it just goes with the active layer. But when you're in the move tool, you notice that there's this little auto select up here. Okay. And when you have that turned on and you click, it goes to the layer of whatever opaque pixel it finds. Okay. So if I click on the yellow, see it goes to layer 1. And if I click on the opaque pixels, like not here, of layer 2, it goes there. Okay, so auto select. I usually work with this turned off. It's really just useful if you have a document with a couple hundred layers or something on it, and you're spending all day long scrolling up and down. It's easier just to click on the thing and go to that layer. But particularly if you're kind of new in Photoshop, I think that you can end up accidentally, if you leave that turned on, you'll keep going to the wrong layer by accident, which could be pretty annoying. So I'm going to keep that auto select turned off. All right. Let's look at adjustments and adjustment layers before we go on here. Okay. So as we just saw when I was playing with the clouds, I could go image adjustments, and we have all these sets of controls. Probably brightness, contrast, and hue saturation are the 2 that you'll find most useful in this class, where we're just mostly doing kind of free form creative work. But if you're a photographer or working where maintaining the fidelity of colors or the tonal, maintaining the tonal range is really important. Maybe levels and curves are something you might use more of. It depends. Some of these are just kind of like more, kind of like wild and creative down here. But at any rate, let's just do, say, hue saturation. I'm on layer 2, right? So these things, image adjustments, they're applied to the layer you're on, okay? And if I turn the saturation down, you'll see that I'm affecting just this layer 2, okay? So this is what we would call, again, a destructive editing technique. When it does something, it's done, right, to that particular layer. So we have something called adjustment layers that do the same thing, but in a non-destructive way, meaning you can take it away and have the original layer still there, okay? That's not particularly important when you just have a painted number 2, but if you had a complete photograph or something, and then you didn't want to ruin it while you were working on it, it's more important. Plus, it just gives you more flexibility. So anyway, these adjustment layers are, if you look down the bottom of your layer palette, there's the FX thing for layer styles. There's a little thing that looks like a Japanese flag for masks. And the next thing that's kind of yin-yang looking, if I click on that, you'll see that there's a list of names that's almost the same list as image adjustments. A little different, but there I can see hue saturation, okay? And when I apply that, it gives me, it creates a mask. We haven't talked about masks yet, but we will, an empty mask. But, and I can make a change to it, right? So if I turn the saturation down, okay. But the thing is, it acts on all the layers that's below it. It's like a filter looking down. So if let's say we just turn the saturation way down, make it a little darker. Okay, so it's on the very top of my layer stack, right? Now, if I drag it down to below layer 2, okay, see how that's now bright, and below layer 1, okay? So now it's just acting on the background. So it only works on what it's below, okay? And the nice thing about this is you can turn it down. Well, first of all, I can, anytime I can get back here. Like if I do image adjustments over here, I can't return to it again. It's done, right? But here I can come back and make changes to it, right? It's live. And also I can go to the opacity and turn down the opacity to lessen the effect of that adjustment layer. Okay, so a few other things. Let's look at a mask, right? Now we will look at mask more in a moment. This is just the first peek at it. Now see if right now there's a kind of box around the adjustment layer part, but if I click here, that means the mask is active. And you'll notice that when the mask is active and you go to your paintbrush, it's either black or white, okay? And if I paint on it, all right, it's painting a mask, a black place where the adjustment layer is not being applied. Okay. And if I do Control-I, that inverts the mask and makes it a hole instead of makes it a hole in the mask. All right. Let's go to, actually, I'm going to do some Control-Z's to get out of that monkeying with the mask. All right. Now, one other thing, though, I didn't want to get too far off into masks because we'll do that all in one deal. But one thing about this is you need to be able to make the adjustment layer work on only one layer, right? I mean, it's kind of a pain that it works great. It's flexible, but the fact that it affects everything below it could be a problem, right? So what you do is you put it in a group, right? So I'm going to take the adjustment layer and just this layer too, right? So I did shift click, they're both active, and I right click and let's see, group from layers up here. And I'm just going to say okay to all the defaults, all right? And now see there's a group, like a little folder, and if I open it up, you'll see the adjustment layer and layer 2 are both inside there, all right? Now the way that you get it to, when it does that, it sets the blending mode to this weird blending mode called pass through. And actually to make it so it only acts inside the layer, pass through means the adjustment layer works right through the group, okay, or through this folder. If I just change this back to normal, okay, now the adjustment layer is only working inside the folder. Okay. So that is how you make adjustment layers only work on one layer, or multiple layers, but just not on all the layers below them. Okay. Let's look at masks for a moment. I'm going to go and turn down the opacity of this adjustment layer. Okay. Let's look at a mask. I'm going to drag my layer 1 up to the top here. All right. So let's say we want to change this 1 some way. I could go and just get my eraser, right? That's this guy here, and just erase stuff if I didn't want it. Like, let's say I don't want this bottom part of this thing. But then what if I say, oops, I erased a little bit too much, or I want that thing after all, okay? In the current working session, you can say Control-Z, but you can't always do that. If I save it and come back tomorrow and change my mind, I'm pretty much out of luck. So normally we don't erase stuff in Photoshop, we use masks, right? And a mask works in place of erasing and a lot of other ways you want, or other ways you want to hide part of a layer. So I'm going to hit the mask icon, okay, right there. So now there's a mask on this layer 1. And I'm going to the, not in the eraser tool, but back to the paintbrush, and you'll see black and white, okay? And if I want to put resist or masked material on here, I just paint with the black, okay? And let's say we, again, erase a little bit too much. And here's a place where one shortcut that's good to remember is useful. It's the X key, okay? And if you watch right here in my foreground and background colors, X just swaps them. And when you're painting with on a mask, you frequently want to swap between, resist or mask and the hole in the mask. So see if I paint with white now, I can bring it all right back. Oops, if I go a little too far, I just hit X and go back to the black. Okay, if I want to make it more of a harder edge. Okay. All right, so that's the value of a mask. And normally they're locked together, okay? But if I click on this little lock-looking thing here and move it, see, that's probably not what I want. So I'll Control-Z that, put the lock back on. And now also here's another thing to remain aware of. You got to be aware of if you're working on the colored part of the layer, right? Or the fill or whatever you want to call it, or on the mask. Whichever one you click on gets this highlighted white outline around it. Okay, and you can see in the bottom of my my toolbar the fill and stroke color. When I'm on the pixels of the layer, it shows me whatever my colors are, and when I'm on the mask, it's just black and white. It can be gray also. Okay, you can paint with half mask. All right, so that's a quick look at some masks and adjustment layers. We'll go on and do some exercises with masks next.